You are listening to the Channeling Source podcast. May what's for the highest good to occur, occur. Hey, you're listening to the Channeling Source podcast. I'm Brandon Bloom, and I'm a channeler, intuitive. I facilitate energy healing classes and things like that. There's more on me in the description and in the links below, such as my website. However, that's not exactly or at all necessarily what this is about. This is an episode on owning your power and ways to own your power. And the way this episode works is I channeled through information on owning your power and on ways to own your power from my spirit guides, the angels, and source for you. And this is meant to be for you, those of you tuning into this who will be listening to this. It's not just necessarily rando information that I'm just blasting out there. It's meant to be for you. And you know, there will be multiple people listening to this, so you might find there are some parts or phrases that are more for others than you, though my intention would be that this all is helpful and helps in whatever ways would be for the highest good, no matter who you are that's listening. So I have 5 main points I channeled through on owning your power. I also have some things that percolated and came to me while I was sitting with the topic, and I'll also be flowing with and including any channeled or intuitive information that comes through while I'm reading these main points to you and going through everything else that came through ahead of time, of course. The last thing is there will be a full channel mode session at the end. I really liked what came through for it. I've already recorded it and facilitated that, so you can find that. And there will be more information on the benefits of channel material and full channel mode material, as far as the benefits of listening to it, that you can read in the description. And I'm sure I'll talk about it a bit before delving into the full channel mode session. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, and let's start. Before we get into number 1, I did ask my spirit guides, the angels and the source, hey, what is the purpose of owning your power? Just in case you were wondering why to own your power or would like some sort of reason for it. And they said the purpose of owning your power is living the best life possible for you. So you living your best life. So hopefully that is reason enough to consider this topic or consider why this is a topic to be talked about. And let's get to number 1 now. Number 1 is making your own choices, leading your own life, honing your intuition and divine guidance. And I'm going to read what came through and then get to some other things that percolated and that I'm intuitively and divinely guided to get to. So, owning your power includes making your own choices based on your intuition, your channel guidance, and what you know to be true, at least most of the time. It includes honing your intuition to a degree that you can be self-led at least to a good amount of the time. This will help to avoid you getting swept up into other people's agendas. It will also help you to avoid joining cults if that was a concern for you, and other things like that. Your gifts and abilities, intuition, channel guidance, and awareness are a part of you owning your power. Owning your gifts is a part of you owning your power. To go a bit further, essentially, you are free from giving your power away by remaining free from letting others be the ones who ultimately take the reins in your life and make decisions and choices for you. Owning your power involves leading your own life. So, one of the big things with owning your power, or at least one area to consider, is are you making your own choices? You could also get into the area of are you making the best choices for you based on your intuition, your knowing? And by knowing, I don't mean what you think or thinking that you know. It's like, what is your intuition, divine guidance giving you and telling you? And of course, that's always going to be accurate. Your actual intuition is always going to be accurate. So that's what I mean by knowing is your actual knowing, not what you think. And it doesn't even necessarily mean scientific facts, and scientific facts get disproven all the time. So I hope you understand a bit more of what I'm saying when I say knowing. It's literally, I just mean intuition. So, one big area with owning your power is not giving the power of your choice away to other people, like is already probably been said quite a bit by my spirit guides in that sentence. And what they're saying, of course, is one of the ways to do this is hone your intuition so you're empowered to make the best choices for you without having to rely on anyone else too much. Another thing to consider with this is, are you making the best possible choices according to what your intuition is telling you and what your divine guidance is telling you, just to the best of your ability? Or are you making choices because someone else over here said this, or someone else over here is going to be jealous of you if you make a certain choice, or someone else is going to judge you for a certain choice? To give some examples, let's say you are going to make a choice in dating. You are looking to date a certain person, or you have a choice between multiple people, or something like that. And the not owning your power version of this is your friend saying, no, don't date that person, blah, da, 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 da. You should date this person. And you don't question it. You don't circle back with what do you actually desire, or what is your intuition telling you? What's your divine guidance telling you? You just kind of blindly follow your friend and what they're saying because they're your friend, and you might have whatever reasons or rationalizations you give to it. However, if you're making all of your choices based on other people and what they want and what they want you to choose for whatever their reasons may be, you're in essence sort of giving your power away to them usually. And there may be some caveats, but, the friend might not want you to date someone because they're jealous, or because they like them, or because they don't have anyone to date and they just want you to not date anyone because of reasons. Like how people kind of get weird like that sometimes. So that's part of why they're talking about intuition, because if you're listening to your intuition will be like, hey, don't listen to your friends. You should date this person for XYZ reasons. It's for the highest good. You will get some learnings, or they actually genuinely care about you. They're a great person. It would be a great vibrational compatible match, etc., etc., etc. At the very least, you should probably be considering what you would like to choose, and also what would be best for you to choose when you're making a choice instead of just listening to other people. One thing I'd like to mention before talking about honing in your intuition and some ways to do that, and episode 2 in this podcast will actually have a lot more information on channeling and honing in your intuition as well. However, ultimately, you are the one who is responsible for your choices. So even if you make a choice based on what someone else wants, or someone else is telling you to choose for whatever reason or agenda, and some people want what's best for you, others don't, you know, regardless, you're the one who's making that choice. Even if someone else tells you to choose it, it's your responsibility, like all your choices essentially in life. Most of you are not going to come from this place. However, one reason I kind of felt like including it is that some people may wish to defer their choices to others, because then if it doesn't go well, they can blame the other person. The reason I'm talking about this is it is ultimately still your choice. Like, you chose to listen to them, you chose to make that choice based on what they said. You are the one who didn't choose to get more information, or trust your intuition, or hone in your intuition, or get in touch with your intuition about the topic. So keep that in mind. Like, try not to go into victim mode, blaming other people, or try not to use that as a fallback, would be a recommendation at least, because that's not an empowered place. And if we're talking about owning your power, the more empowered place would probably be like, okay, I made that choice. You know what I'm saying? And this could even include topics where there are experts in the field who are purporting ideas, or purporting things you should do in whatever area. And even if there is an expert yelling to the nines about something, ultimately it is still your responsibility and ultimately your choice to make the best choices for you in your life. It's not necessarily the expert's responsibility to choose for you. You could argue kind of gets into a weird territory. You could kind of argue they have a responsibility to put the best information out there, and all that. I don't really get that all of them do. There are many different reasons people do and say things, honestly. So please own your power and realize, even if an expert says it, it's still your responsibility to kind of get to what the best choice is for you, no matter the topic, because ultimately your life is probably going to be influenced by your choice. And this brings us back to the intuition portion and why my spirit guides included it essentially in this section is it's a great we already said it. It's a great way to empower yourself to make the best choices for yourself. And once you really get it honed in, especially to a high level, you can tune into your intuition. You can tune into your channeled guidance. You can get that information about anything, any choice, any topic, any area. So, an obvious example could be you're listening to a dating coach because you're trying to get a boyfriend or girlfriend or a partner of some variety, regardless of the gender or orientation that you are into. And the dating coach might go, blah, 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 do this, always say this, never say that. And then your spirit guides are like, no, that's terrible advice. Actually, we would advise you to do this instead. Or we'll guide you through the interaction. Don't worry about it. Just don't listen to this person. Let's turn this off and listen to something that's actually going to be productive to you. Not to crap on all dating coaches. I'm sure there are great ones out there. I've also seen a lot of advice that's not great and not really coming from the best conscious, aware place. You know what I'm saying? So, by honing in your intuition, you are empowering yourself to make the best choices for yourself in every area. And I realize for some people, their intuition can just like open up really quickly and then they have full access to it all the time and they're like wizards with it. And other people, it might take some time. There might not be a quick fix. And most all of you, if not all of you, are going to find that putting the work in some way is going to be needed for this. And it doesn't have to be like hard, terrible, horrific work. It could be you're putting effort into it, but there's ease and grace and fun and joy and space to it. And I'd always recommend asking for that when you manifest, by the way, is like, what will it take for this to show up with ease and joy and fun and grace and spaciousness and relaxation or whatever, you feel called to ask for. Like always, I would recommend at least asking for ease and grace when you're asking for things. Like I ask that this shows up with ease and grace. Thank you. So let's talk about honing in your intuition here. One of the ways to do this is to practice it. So when you're newer to this, I realize it can be a bit of a journey and you might have like we just talked about, a ton of ease and grace with it. It might just show up and you're like, oh, that was magical and I got what to do and it showed up like this. And wow, that was great. That's what my intuition's like. Awesome. And then you have that reference for the future and you know how your intuition shows up. You can listen to it when it shows up like that, the next time it's showing up like that. So, like if you get an intuitive visual, for example, there might also, I don't want to put this on you. I don't want to say it's guaranteed. There might also be frustrating moments where you pull a card and you're like, like if you're pulling an oracle card, for example, you're like, what does this mean? I don't, yeah, and then a lot of people kind of have those moments early on with intuition, or like they might practice channeling and be like, I just got this sentence and I'm not sure if I just made this up or not. And the advice I'm getting from my spirit guides, I'm like, okay, what would be the best advice for people who are in that phase right now is keep showing up, keep being persistent, keep giving yourself space and time to practice your intuition in the ways that you know how. And you'll start to get more experiences. The universe will bring you more resources and like you can manifest it too. You can that's a kind of a cheat code, but you can manifest your gifts expanding. I might have kind of let a cat out of the bag before I was supposed to with that, but oh well. Anyways, if you keep showing up, the universe can bring you the resources, experiences, people, classes, etc. that will show you how your intuition works, that will give you opportunities to practice and to see how it works, just the way it starts showing up, such as maybe you go to an energy healing class and then you are working with the energy and facilitating energy healing, and then you get an intuitive visual of what the person you're facilitating an energy healing session for is going through. And then like you talk to them about it and it's totally accurate. You're like, oh my God. And then like you have that experience. And when you start getting intuitive visuals in that same way, either during sessions or outside of them, you know that it's your intuition and how it shows up and what it's like when it shows up and what the energy is like when it shows up, etc. And you can go from there and keep growing it from there because of those experiences. So, any way you practice your intuition every day is going to be great. Even if you pull an oracle card for yourself every day and see if you get an intuitive message or a channeled message on it. Or if you channel for yourself every day, like with channeled writing. There's a channeler named Lee Harris, and I really like a lot, if not all of his work. And he talks about a way to practice channeling is at the top of a paper, right? What does my soul want to tell me? And you're channeling your soul and you see what messages you get, when you're doing that. And even if you're newer and you don't feel like you get anything, you're still practicing getting in the energy of receiving messages. So you're still making headway. And even just like the intentionality, the intention of showing up and doing something like practicing your intuition or channeling like that can move mountains on its own and manifest things on its own because you're showing the universe you're taking action and like things are probably going to happen. And even if that's not the best way for you to do it, the universe will be like, oh, cool, you're actually taking action on it. Okay, we know you're trying to go this way. Actually, we have this other thing. We're going to put this video in front of you that gives you another way to practice your intuition or to channel. And that will give you the information you need and actually work for you. And you can start doing this every day instead of that first thing you heard with channel writing or whatever. So even if you're doing something like that and just getting the ball rolling, I highly consider practicing your channeling and or intuition every day in some capacity, even if it's just like 5 or 10 minutes or longer. The other thing you can do once you start having more experience is like practice giving an oracle card reading to a friend, like hang out with friends you have who are interested in that stuff and be like, hey, I'm new. I'd like to try this and see if anything shows up. Like, let's see what happens. And like, do you get you know, any intuitive messages at all, whether it's like you get a clear sentient feeling of like, oh, your friend's going through this and it feels sad and oh, it's about their father. Oh, interesting. Or, you get a clear cognizant knowing, or you get a channeled message. You're like, oh, I didn't realize I could get clear audience messages, and as you're showing up and giving yourself these practice areas, like it just gives more space for the universe to work through you and show you how you operate. Pretty obvious, I guess, on the practicing note. However, you can grow your intuition and channeling through practice. So, I'm planning on launching this podcast with multiple episodes available at the start. So, you can listen to more than one. And I know that episode 2 is going to be about channeling and growing your channeling essentially. So, I'm actually going to let that be the episode I go more in depth with it and just move to number 2 here because otherwise, this is going to be a really long episode. And I can talk about intuition and channeling and growing intuition and channeling for hours. I actually like there's an intro to channeling class I facilitate and I'm always like this will be like 2 hours. No, it's like 5 hours long every time and yeah, I can just sit there and talk about it for a long time. So let's move to number 2 here. I will say, though, I highly recommend you going on the journey of learning your intuition, whatever that looks like, because as I was going through these points, again, before recording this podcast episode, I realized that for me, honing in my intuition and divine guidance and channeling helped me with every single one of these areas, if not every area of my life in like so many out of this world ways, honestly. So, really consider it as a way to empower yourself. As a quick bonus before we go to number 2, I did want to mention that another reason to hone in your intuition regarding all this is it will help you just, regardless of whether other people will like judge you for a choice, or maybe more, you're afraid of other people's judging you for a choice, or you're afraid of other people being jealous, or whatever other reason. Instead of letting that control you, you can be like, okay, what would be for the highest good for me to choose regardless, or anyways, and you can get that information from your spirit guides, from the angels, from source, from your intuition, however it shows up for you, however you operate. And it kind of gets it to a place where, regardless of what anyone else is choosing, believing, judging, projecting, whatever, you can make the best choices for you. So I feel like I beat that to a pulp. Let's go to number 2. The second channeled message that came through on owning your power is about being willing to have abundance and enough power for you. And it's not about power over others or anything like that. Again, it's more owning your power, self-empowerment, etc. Originally, I heard this idea of abundance and power being interlinked from, again, Lee Harris. He facilitated a channel on it, and my spirit guides brought this through as well here, and we'll delve more into it. So, reading what came through ahead of time, owning your power includes your willingness to have abundance, to have money, and to be powerful in the world. It includes being willing to have what it takes to have power in your world. This does not mean power over others or anything negative like that. For example, if you have money, you won't be dependent on anyone who might try to control you by being the source of money for you or control you through money, etc. And we'll talk about some examples. A more obvious example might be, and I'm pretty sure this was more common in the past than it is maybe now. The example would be husbands who make all the money and they control the finances, and the wife doesn't really make money, and maybe she's never had a job in her whole life. And so the wife can kind of end up in a position where it's difficult to leave the relationship or situation if the wife doesn't have a support system or her own income or just something to fall back on. And so it can kind of turn out where the husband is controlling the wife a bit and controlling some of her choices, or it somehow makes the wife feel like she can't choose certain things in her life, like leaving the house or hanging out with certain friends or things like that. So, of course, like there are awake, aware, conscious, benevolent people who will happily help you or others with money in a way that's for the highest good, balanced, and there's no agenda to it. So, you can be aware of who you're working with when it comes to money, and you could see part one on honing in your intuition as something to look at again regarding that. So, in some ways, what this is about is being willing to have abundance and money. One, so that other people can't control you. And even if you think of an example like, let's say you have tens of millions of dollars in the bank and you're still working a job just because or for whatever reason, if your boss starts acting like a butt or something weird happens where the company's being awful to work for, it's much easier for you to just leave that situation and find another one or do something else entirely when you have that abundance and money in place than if you don't and you're entirely reliant or dependent on that job. I realize like this concept of like having money or abundance, it might not be a quick fix if you're not in a really abundant position already or not positioned to step into that in the near future. It can be, it can happen quickly, of course. That's not to limit you at all. However, just some of this is meant to shift you so you're willing to have at least some of these things so you can have a life where you're more in your power. And it's getting you to pay attention to these areas to see how you could be more empowered and how you could choose to start moving towards your power. So I realize now all of this is like, hey, why don't you just make millions of dollars tomorrow? What are you doing? You're so wrong for not having that. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. Hopefully that was obvious. That's not what I was saying at all. The other thing with abundance and money is it really can help you to make maneuvers in your life and make things happen with more ease in your life. Like if you would like to move, it's probably easier to do that if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars saved up or something like that than if you have $0 and it's just a big hassle. And of course, it's still possible. There's ways to make it happen, there's ways to manifest things. It's not like you can't do things if you don't have money. It's more just, hey, having more abundance could be something that helps to empower you to do certain things in your life with greater ease. The other thing with having more abundance and money is it could put you in a position where it's easier for you to help the world or do certain things in the world for other people when you have a certain amount of abundance, that you can utilize to do so. So, in some ways, it empowers you to make changes in the world with ease, if that was not already entirely obvious with what has been said so far. So I was checking in on, okay, is there anything else I really need to say about this? And they were saying, my spirit guides are saying, hey, you guys who are listening pretty much get it by now. So we can probably move to number three. To summarize, I would be willing to have abundance, to move towards abundance, and to move towards owning your power in that area or through that area and allowing that to be a way you empower yourself in the world, even if it takes time. And if that's not something you're particularly interested in, is there some other form of abundance that could help you own your power? For example, the one that kind of keeps showing up is like a support system. So if you have a lot of really great close friends, and let's say you were the wife in the example we talked about before, where the husband makes all the money, controls all the finances, and is starting to be really controlling with what the wife can choose. And the wife doesn't feel like they have a good way out because if they leave, well, what if they're in poverty? What if they can't find a job? What if they can't make enough money to support them and maybe even the kids? Like there could be a lot of things that are obstacles or seem like obstacles to the wife. If the wife had a really good support system and like a friend was like, hey, you can stay with me. And then, hey, maybe you have another friend and that friend's husband has a job position open and they're willing to hire you, or you have another friend that owns a company that's willing to hire you. Like there's all these different things that could happen, so there could be other things regarding this topic that you could turn to besides money or look at. So hopefully any of this is helpful and is conducive to you moving in the best directions for you. The third thing that came through on owning your power is healthy boundaries and setting healthy boundaries. So, be willing to set boundaries so you can have your best life and the best connections possible for you, and so you can have a life that works for you. So, I'm going to read the paragraph that came through. Healthy boundaries. This can take awareness, see part one, when it comes to setting boundaries that are for the highest good, fair, for all involved, that are firm, and that allow you to be at your best. Awareness and intuition are going to tell you when to say no and even how to say no for best results. Healthy boundaries will allow you to live your best life and will keep those who would use and abuse you away. It also opens space and time for what is right for you and what is meant to be there. One step to owning your power is going to be setting healthy boundaries with those around you and even with yourself and how you use your time, as an example. So, an example of you setting a boundary for yourself with how you use your time might be if you start setting a bedtime for yourself so that you go to bed at a certain time and you get enough sleep and you have more energy. And maybe that kind of allows you to have more energy to start a business after work or something like that. And it empowers you to make other changes in your life. Or it could be setting a boundary with how much time you spend on social media. Like maybe there's a project you really want to work on, but you just scroll for hours and, people do it. It's not judging you. It happens. However, maybe if you set the boundary with yourself, like, okay, we're going to do just this amount of time. I'm going to allow myself to scroll. However, I'm also going to just make sure there's an hour of time I used to spend scrolling that I'm going to be working on this project instead. Would be another example of a boundary with yourself and how that, that could, of course, help you in pretty obvious ways according to the example. And the thing is, like, you'll have more space for yourself as you're setting boundaries for yourself and maybe even with yourself for yourself. The other thing is, like, if you set a boundary with a loved one who is always making your life hell, well, it might set that relationship at odds for a bit. It will open up space for something better to take its place. And the other thing I would like to say is, like, it's really okay to be tactful with setting boundaries. And, like, your intuition will usually guide you to do things in a more tactful, at least for me. I found my divine guidance and intuition does guide me through doing these things tactfully, not like super brutally where it just completely ticks everyone off and everyone's against me or something like that. And actually, I just looked at my notes here, and there is a message of please remember tact when setting boundaries. Please double check your intuition to make sure it's for the highest good. Healthy communication can really go a long way with setting boundaries. And again, if we didn't already say it, setting boundaries makes space for what belongs. Now, you could say that it could take a certain amount of owning your power in the first place to set healthy boundaries. It's going to take a certain amount of self respect and honoring yourself. And it's also, like they kind of said, it's probably going to take some type of awareness as well. I found that my channeling and divine guidance and intuition, once that really was honed in, that helped me a lot with boundaries. Because if I was getting to say no to someone, it was a lot easier to say no to someone. Like if someone says, "Hey, would you like to come do this thing?" and my spirits are like, no, don't go," then I'll just be like, "Okay, nope, no thanks." And most people are just totally cool with like when I say no. It's definitely not something to be afraid of. And if people make you afraid for saying no, Or like if you say no and people are just totally awful to you, like are those really the best people to surround yourself with in the first place? So that would be an example of setting a boundary, bringing you greater awareness of what's around you, anyways, and would help you make better choices for yourself. It would also give you good information about that person and that relationship so you know what's best for you going forward regarding it, you could say. So try not to be afraid of setting boundaries. I'd definitely be brave when you know you would like to or that it's for the highest good to say no to something. And setting the boundaries, it allows you to say no to what you'd like to say no to. It allows you to say yes to what you'd like to say yes to, and it allows you to carve space for what really matters to you and to your world. An empowered person is going to have good, firm, healthy boundaries. Now, for those of you who are afraid of making people feel bad or are afraid of hurting people's feelings, I totally understand when it comes to setting healthy boundaries, saying no, or even when we talked about what we talked about in the first point, where maybe there's like a friend who is saying, oh, don't date that person. And maybe you're afraid of losing that friend, or you're afraid of hurting that friend's feelings or making them upset with you because you chose against what they said. I would probably say that a healthy friendship, there'd be a pretty healthy allowance for, taking or not taking the advice that a friend gives you. There'd probably it's a little bit controlling if someone gets so upset at you for not doing what they told you to do, through their advice. Like that gets to be a bit controlling. That's a bit probably unhealthy. And are you really going to allow yourself to be controlled or emotionally terrorized into making choices that aren't what's best for you, aren't what's for your highest good by other people? That's part of where the healthy boundaries comes in, of course, like what we're talking about. But what I was originally kind of getting to, like if you feel bad about doing like saying no or potentially hurting someone's feelings, you do have to, at least to a certain degree, or it's probably very strongly recommended that you live your life for you. Like it's your life. Like you can't just live your life for everyone else and other people and never have time for you, never have space for you, never make choices for you at all, ever, and say that you're living. You probably can't do that and say you're living a really empowered life where you're owning your power unless that's what you'd like to choose and for whatever reason feel called to that. That might be a caveat. However, your life is yours and it's about you. And even if you have people that are dependent on you, can you take some time for you? Can you do some things for you to take care of yourself? Can you do something to make at least a better part of your life about you and what you'd like to experience? And maybe it'll take changing things or moving things around. Maybe it will take time. Maybe it won't. However, if you're getting to a place where you are taken care of and you're taking care of you, you'll be in a better place to take care of others, serve your purpose, etc. Or at least be there in a healthy way where you're feeling good and you're in a better mood and energy when you are taking care of the people who are dependent on you. So don't neglect you, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So, are there any areas you need to set boundaries with other people, with organizations, with yourself? See if anything comes to you while this podcast is running. And even if you already work with your intuition and channeling, see if anything comes to you when you ask, is there anywhere I need to put boundaries in place more firmly or anything I need to change regarding my boundaries? Just sit with it, see what comes to you. As you work on your boundaries, you're automatically going to be owning your power more. They really go hand in hand. It just seems pretty obvious to me now that I'm saying this and reading this to you and talking about this topic with you. So, if you'd like to own your power more, be willing to set and maintain healthy boundaries. And they're saying that's all they would like to say. So let's move to number 4 here. I hope that was helpful. I realize I could go further in depth with like more information on setting boundaries. However, that could probably be its own episode. If you would like a resource to look into regarding setting boundaries, Again, Lee Harris, who's a channeler, he has a course on setting boundaries, and that could be something that you look into. And I'm sure there are other great resources out there as well that talk about it. If you're someone who knows that boundaries is a weak area for you, it might be time to look into the resources you need to change that area so you can live a more empowered life and just more of a life you'd like to actually live. I'd imagine if you have really weak boundaries, there are plenty of experiences that are happening that you would rather are not happening. There are plenty of things in relationships that are going on that you would not prefer are going on. I'd imagine you're not as happy as you could be in your life. And hopefully I'm wrong if that's you and boundaries, that's a weak area for you. However, it could be a really good area to focus on if you feel it would help you. So, number four actually ties in a bit with number three to me as I'm reading through this. It's kind of clicking that it does. Number four is owning your value and owning your value in your life. And of course, if you own your value, you're probably also going to be more in a place where you'll say no to the things that don't honor you and that don't value you and that don't match up with your value. So there is a bit of a thing to talk about. There's owning your value as far as like how much are you charging in business, for example, or for a session or for a product that you're selling. And then there's also talking about your value, which is inherent and infinite as a soul on earth. So try not to get it mixed up while we're talking about this. It does kind of pertain to both. It's also the case that even if you are infinitely valuable, it probably won't work to charge infinite dollars for a project or, $1 million for a 30-minute talk on the phone with a client or something like unless you've positioned yourself that way or you've done some work to get there, which kudos, that's awesome. Congrats. However, I don't think that's anyone that's listening to this, except maybe one person way in the future somehow. Anyways, I'm going to read what came through ahead of time. They're actually guiding me to read it in a different order than I originally had it, so bear with me here. Here we go. Owning your value is going to help you own your power because you will be charging your worth. You will recognize your value and stay away from situations that don't honor that. The self healing it takes to recognize, honor, and own your value is going to bring you to a healthier place. Ultimately, owning your power is going to come from a healthy place and a healthy self perspective, as well as balanced and true perspective on life. And the other paragraph they would like me to read ultimately, all are worthy and deserving. Ultimately, you are infinitely worthy and you are worthy inherently. You will have to be honest with yourself when it comes to setting prices in your business. However, know that you are infinitely worthy of abundance. Maybe there will be some things to clean up or heal before you can have what you'd like, but don't let that stop you. And here's the last paragraph they'd like me to read to you. Owning your value in life, which is going to help with all three things talked about so far. Owning your value does not mean price gouging on a service or product you sell, though it can often entail raising your prices to higher than you might suspect in business, according to your divine guidance and intuition. And it doesn't mean thinking you're better than everyone. It involves an accurate, intuitive assessment of where you're at, as well as the landscape around you, and it entails you moving towards what you truly desire with tact and in ways that are for the highest good. So, those are three different paragraphs around owning your value. However, there were a few things I would like to talk about here. Owning your value can help with point number two we talked about here, which was abundance and being willing to have abundance and being willing to have money as well. Because if you're owning your value, you'll probably be more likely to move towards situations that honor you and that pretty much pay you what you're worth, pay you your value. And it helps with number three, the setting boundaries. We kind of already touched on it because if you're owning your value, you're not going to put up with someone saying tons of crap to you or treating you like crap. You're going to be like, I am worth so much more than this. This is a joke. I am walking away now. Maybe you'll have a corrective conversation with them and be like, hey, when you do this, I really don't like it. Can we can you please change this behavior and do something else? I'd really appreciate it. And, again, if they trample all over that, probably not the best person to surround yourself with. And if you're owning your value, you're going to put you and you owning your value before even things like what you might potentially gain from certain situations, like if it's a really attractive person, but they're treating you like crap and you're trying to date them or something like that, you'll probably be more willing to walk away if you're owning your value than if you're like, oh, but I need the validation of the attractive person dating me or liking me or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, owning your value can really get you out of or keep you from getting into sticky situations. And it's just going to naturally lend itself to you owning your power, like we've already talked about. So, as far as some ways to begin owning your power via owning your value, they kind of already said it. What they're saying is like really look into your self healing and adjusting your self perspective through getting to a more healed or fully healed place. It might not be something you can just, I mean, maybe this conversation will just spark things in you and you'll be able to adjust and be like, oh, cool, I see this more clearly now. However, getting to a more healed place is something that's going to help you to just see this more acutely and see your value or be able to receive what others are communicating to you is your value. Like if you have friends that tell you great things about you all the time, but you're like, yeah, but my dad thinks I'm crap, blah, 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 because my dad said all this. Like maybe it's time to look into healing that and getting a more accurate perspective to look at things through so that you'll own your value a bit more. Instead of just assuming that the nice things that your friends were telling you were not true or didn't apply for some reason. The other thing I just keep getting when I'm like, well, what would help them own their value is just the truth. Like we've been talking about this whole time, like seeing things through an accurate lens, seeing through things from a healthy perspective that's true and accurate. Like if you see the truth of your value, the truth of what you bring to the table, the truth of what's best for you, that's going to help you naturally own your value because you'll be operating from truth and what's actually there and less from like ideas or beliefs or stories you might have that aren't the truth of you that might have you put yourself in situations that don't honor you. Like if someone, this is going to be an extreme example, but if someone has the opinion of themselves that they are a trash person or something like that, I don't personally like that phrase, but if someone has that opinion, they'll probably be more likely to put themselves in situations that reflect their belief of them being a trash person. Like they'll probably get into relationships with people who affirm that to them that they're a trash person, and they'll probably feel more comfortable in them until they start to dig into like what's actually true about me. Is it true that I'm a trash person or is something else entirely true? What value do I actually bring that things like that, start questioning that belief or that opinion of themselves. And that does go back to number 1, the honing in your intuition so you can get an accurate perspective. And, the other thing is like there are great channelers, intuitives, readers out there who will be fully accurate for you and will really help you out and will really help you get on your feet and see these things better so you can make better choices and own your power and value more, of course. So try not to think there's like no one out there that you can ever lean on ever. That's not what I was trying to say. Or that's not what they were trying to say with number 1 at all. It's more coming at it from a balanced way where more often than not, you can trust yourself and your intuition, and you're just not giving your power away to other people by blindly following what they're saying and doing and recommending for you, of course. The other thing I'll talk about, and this will help with all the points so far and the next one actually, and it will actually help you with increasing and honing your intuition, is like energy healing. Energy healing modalities are great, like the attunements you receive, like from Reiki, for example, or from Four Angelic Fires, Source Fires, and Valeyuka, which are actually modalities I channeled through. I wasn't planning on plugging those, it just popped in, so I said it. Like those modalities can open your intuition and who you really are up, and they can get you to a more healed space. And like working with those energies, one, when you're practicing Reiki, for example, you are putting yourself in a position where you're practicing your intuition because you're feeling the energies, you're perceiving what's happening with the session. You might get intuitive or channel messages on where to put your hands during a Reiki session, or just to let you know what a recipient is going through or what you need to do for yourself in a self energy healing session. So you get practice with your intuition, and the energies themselves also open up your gifts and your latent gifts and abilities and intuition that can open you up. So it's just, I would highly recommend it as a tool in your life, as a resource. Looking into energy healing or energy healing classes as some, if you don't already do that, I'm sure some of you tuning into this, or maybe a lot of you tuning into this already do that, but that would be something to help you with intuition, help you get to a healed place where you own your value more naturally. It gives you a tool to help you get there as well. Also, it's going to help you, like, as you just get healed via energy healing modalities or whatever ways are right for you that you feel called to, because there's plenty of great things to turn to work with, to utilize, plenty of great paths to go down to help yourself, to bring yourself in your life to a better place. Like, it's just going to help all these areas really naturally. Like, if you get to a more healed place, it's probably going to get you to a place where you're more willing to receive and have and accept abundance and move towards it without the hangups and the beliefs that get in the way and the stories people inject into us societally about, like, oh, what it means to have money. Or there's all these people who think money is bad automatically, and they judge money and people who have money. And that definitely probably keeps them from having money, and it just kind of turns into a whole thing. But if you're getting healed, you're moving those things out of the way. It's really going to help with all these areas, of course. And when you're in a healed place, we already talked about this, but you'll be less apt to just accept crap, and so you'll probably have an easier time setting healthy boundaries as well. I guess, like, another thing that's popping in is you'll probably also get to a place where you, like, need people less. It I know there are certain people in certain situations, like, such as with disabilities, where they are just kind of dependent on people, and this isn't necessarily what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to get to here is being able to be on your own feet, stand on your own to a certain extent, or, like, not need or over rely on others too much. It's kind of like the concept of, I haven't read this book in a long time. However, there's a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it's by, like, Steve Covey or something like that. And he talks about dependence versus independence versus interdependence. And so dependence is like you're just totally dependent on people. And if you think of the more unhealthy relationships you've seen in your life, especially, like, romantic's the one that comes to mind, but it could be any relationship. The more unhealthy ones are the ones where they are just like, oh, I need you. Oh, I'm so dependent on you. Solve all my daddy issues. Oh, I need you to validate me, things like that. And then there's independence where you don't really need anyone. You can stand on your own 2 feet, so to speak. You're not reliant or dependent on others. And then there's interdependence where it's like, yes, you can stand on your own, you're empowered, and you're choosing to work with others in a way that's win-win, mutually beneficial, and it benefits the whole. But it's not coming from a place of disempowerment and being taken for a ride by the other party. Both parties are coming whole, empowered, and able to be independent. They would just like the benefits of working together to go further than perhaps they can go on their own. So, is there a way, if this applies to you in your life, that you can come from a less dependent or needy type of place and stand on your own 2 feet enough that you are interdependent with others instead of stuck in dependence of others, which is where you kind of get more of the situations like being controlled by others via their money if they're not in an aligned place, or yada yada. You kind of get it by this point, hopefully. Before we move on, I guess I'll say realize that you're worthy. Realize that you're worthy of owning your value. Realize you're worthy of having things and situations you would like to have and experiences you would like to have. And know that you are worth it. Of course. Of course. I feel like there's more I could say on owning your value. And I also realize that each of these points probably could be its own podcast episode. But let's move to number 5. Number 5, and this surprised me a bit when it came through, is being yourself. And here's what came through. Being yourself is going to help you own your power because you will be who you are meant to be. Being you is not just an amorphous concept that self help gurus throw at you. Being yourself includes being connected to your highest self and energetically stepping into who you truly are, which could honestly help with all of these points so far. Being yourself means embodying your highest self, your actual etheric highest self, and owning and holding that. You will automatically own your power if you are being you. And whenever I read this line, my guides go boom. So I'll read it again. You will automatically own your power if you are being you. And by being you, they don't necessarily mean a story of who you are or maybe even a constructed personality of who you are. It's almost more energetic is what I'd like to say, and it's almost more active than just deciding you are this and then trying to cram yourself into a box, so to speak, deciding that's who you are. It's actually more like receiving, like it could be more intuitively receiving who you are or just stepping into it energetically or asking to become it and manifesting it and seeing what shows up to show you who you are and who you're meant to be. And they'd like me to spill the tea on this. One way to like figure out what some of these things mean or create something you're not sure how to create or become something you're not sure how to become, like especially if it's like a more abstract concept like being yourself, is to manifest it and then see what the universe shows you through what manifests. So like, hey, I asked to be myself, or universe step me into who and what I truly be, and me being myself, thank you so much, I asked for that now. And it might shift right away, especially if it's an energetic thing. It might over the next little while, like the events, the resources, the healings, or whatever needs to happen for you to be yourself is going to happen, because you're manifesting it and asked for it. And I guess you could ask for it to change course if you're afraid. I wouldn't recommend it. Or you could ask it to slow down if it's really rough, like you're not stuck with however it's showing up. Well, let me rephrase what I just said. You're not stuck with the pace it's at, or if something happens where you're going through a healing and you're like, "Oh no." Like you can ask it to slow down and have a bit more ease to it. And I think I said something earlier in the episode where remember you can ask for things to happen with ease and grace. Anyways, however, let's keep going here. The next sentence they gave was being you includes being who you're meant to be. So the next thing they wanted me to talk about, I already just talked about, which was energetically stepping into who you are, which is like, universe, please step me into who I am now. Thank you so much. And like intending that it energetically does. And you'll feel a shift probably, especially if you're energetically aware, and things will probably change and more from there. The other thing is what we also just talked about is manifesting being who you are and what you truly are, and then letting the universe show you through what it manifests. So, the other way that you would get like what being you is or is like is some way, shape, or form through your intuition or your channeling. Like you might ask your spirit guides and they'll be like, well, you're actually really caring and a great person, and they give you all these great qualities. So that could help too. And that could probably do way more than what I'm saying here, honestly. And that could be part of you manifesting who you are, is you getting that information somehow from them. Or again, it could just show up. So that's one way to do it. And I did mention it in the last point. However, energy healing and getting to a more healed place is probably naturally going to unveil more of you being you as well, as opposed to who society sells you should be, or who your parents programmed you to be or trained you to be, yada yada. You kind of get the point here. So I would like to reiterate, it's not about like thinking your way into a certain way of being. It's not about forcing yourself to act like a judgment or a conclusion of who you should be, or who religion tells you should be, or who certain organizations tell you is what a good person is, which could just be projections and judgments and not true from a source perspective, which is why number one is so important. Again, is what I would recommend, by the way, on this topic is like asking like what's for the highest good, and then doing that according to what you get intuitively and channeled wise is probably a better way to operate than blindly following what a religion or person says is right or wrong according to those judgments, or projections. Because it's like, who decided that? Why did they decide that? Why are so many people purporting that? And if you're someone who's listening to this and you're hearing me talk about this and you're going like, oh, what's going to happen if everyone stops listening to the religions that tell us not to harm people and steal things? Like, if you're listening to divine guidance, intuition, your channel guidance, and like what's for the highest good, like you're operating from infinite intelligence, infinite wisdom, unconditional love. Like, that's more highest consciousness that, it's not going to be like telling you to go steal and harm people negatively for no reason. Like, sure, if you need to defend yourself, you'll probably get like the message to defend yourself and maybe the guidance on how to do so. And maybe they'll channel through you defending yourself, but that gets into an entirely different topic. And by they, of course, I mean your spirit guides, the angels, source, you know. And if you're following your intuition and divine guidance in the first place, you're probably not going to get into a situation where you need to utilize physical self defense in the first place. I'll put that out there too. Anyways, maybe a better example for talking about this side note I'm going on would be like a topic of sex. It's like, if there's an organization that says sex is wrong and bad because reasons, and we said so, and now it's bad and wrong, and you're bad and wrong if you do it, maybe it's better if you check in with your divine guidance and intuition and talk directly to God about it and not just take someone's word for it, for example. And if you're listening to this and going like, oh, well, then the religion won't be able to control you and what you do. Well, that's the whole point of a podcast episode about owning your power, is not being, well, that's part of the point at least, not being controlled by projections, judgments, mistruth, or things like that, people, organizations, etc. I guess what this part of the talk is doing is it's getting you to step out of judgment and getting you to start questioning and considering accessing your intuition on these things instead of just assuming or trying to use a judgment to get to who you are. What I was also going to say about being yourself is it can be more about unveiling your soul and embodying your soul and letting that shine through. Maybe even being like a pure conduit of your soul, which again could help with your divine guidance and intuition, by the way, rather than a certain personality trait being who you are or a certain quirk being who you are. That can be part of the show or the entire show of who you are, but a nervous tick isn't like who you are. If you have a nervous tick, by the way, I know most of you probably don't. And some of you probably don't even need this conversation. Honestly, for the rest of you, I hope this is starting to paint a picture that gets you closer to you being you authentically. And hopefully it's not confusing to any of you as you're listening to this. And hey, just so you know, one thing before I start to wrap this section up here is you are not your ego or your stories or projections or your thoughts or even what you think per se. You could say you are more your soul or the infinite, unlimited being that you are. And on another note, I know we could go really far with this and be like, oh, well, you are also everything. And I know that puts a whole other spin on the conversation. And it is actually maybe even a little bit slightly off topic compared to what we were getting to. The other thing I'll say is, yeah, with your incarnation now, like your body's part of you, but your body isn't all of you. And your body also has its own consciousness and is maybe, in a sense, its own being, kind of at least. So I wouldn't even buy necessarily that all you are is a body or your body. Of course, most of you don't need me to say that. One more important thing my spirit guides are asking me to include is that one thing that could be important to you being you is undoing societal programming, which is part of what we were kind of talking about with like the religion and the religious beliefs and the judgments and projections on what they paint is the right way to live, for example. So That's going to be a whole other topic. Again, that could probably be a whole other podcast episode, but consider that idea of undoing the programming you've been bludgeoned with since childhood about spirituality, who you are, what's the right way to live, what's right and wrong, etc. And maybe even things about who you are and what you are. But that's going to be your own journey. And I don't really have time to talk about it in this episode at this point. However, a lot of the things we already talked about, energy healing, honing in your intuition and divine guidance, are going to naturally help you undo societal programming and have the knowings you need to do so and the realizations, etc. So we are sort of running out of time if we'd like to keep this episode at a reasonable length. I hope that all this has been helpful and resonant so far, and at least began to shift things more towards you owning your power and to whatever else would be for your highest good. We're going to jump to the full channel mode session here. So, if you're newer to this, I'm going to step out of the way, jump into full channel mode, and my spirit guides, the angels, and source will channel directly through me. Some of the benefits of this are: one, of course, the message that comes through. Two is the energetic transmission from a source that only works for the highest good. It can be something like a healing session, it can move energies, it can cause shifts and changes in you and your life. It can facilitate upgrades and do a whole bunch of other stuff that's for the highest good. And that's a good starting place to understand it. I would just like to be free from limiting it and what it can do, but know that that's a starting place. The other thing it can do is open up your intuition and your channeling if you're meant to channel. So I guess going back to point number one from this episode, listening to full channel mode material could be a great way to start to open that for you. Okay, so I'm just gonna edit this audio so it goes right to the full channel mode session. May this do whatever is for the highest good for it to do for you. Welcome to this session on owning your power. And each of you is a powerful being, and you come here loaded with power from source, your true self, your highest parts of you. And you are all of it, and you are everything. And a key part of you owning your power is realizing you are not a limited human on earth, just waddling your way through your life where you pay bills until you die. You are actually this infinite, unlimited, and powerful spiritual being incarnate upon the planet. And some of you may need to unlock this for yourselves more than others. For some of you have been programmed very deeply to not believe your spiritual gifts, not believe things are possible for you, not believe you are connected to source, not believe that manifestation is real, not to believe that anything can happen for you. And some people do this sort of programming so they can have control over you, whether it be a parent, a religious organization, or even a school teacher or system or governmental organization. And this is not to villainize them, for oftentimes those in power have been programmed themselves to believe what they are saying. Not all, however. Many have some intention behind the limitations they may be bringing about for others through propaganda, through what they villainize or demonize for you in society, and for what they say is wrong. So be aware of your programming that you had growing up, or even the programming that's out there now that might be anti-spiritual or anti-you having abundance or anti-you having money, anti-you owning your power in any way, shape, or form. For that will be the main antagonist to you owning your power. The conditioning and programming you've had. If you had no conditioning or programming, the universe alone would have shown you your power with ease. For as a kid, many of you may have had instances where a manifestation showed up instantly, or you prayed to God and received something, or you made something happen that no one thought you could. And that would be true for you now if no one had programmed you out of that. So, again, this is not to villainize those in power. This is to get you to see what's happening so you can choose differently for you. And you can forgive them and you can begin to own your power by healing these areas where you have been diminished or you diminished yourself to avoid causing pain in others. For example, if someone did not like you shining when you were a kid with singing or in basketball or with sports or in some area, and they did not feel good about you shining and they punished you in some way, or if a parent maybe didn't like that you were doing better than another child or their child, and they tried to get you to step down, or you somehow learned in an untrue way to consider yourself wrong for being elevated in a skill or ability, that could be something that causes you to walk on eggshells around other people in order to not make them feel bad. But now, again, is the time to undo that programming, for you are here to shine. And you are here for your soul to shine. And you shining is an example for others to do the same. And even those who would villainize you for shining, for how it makes them feel. Think of the victim mentality and mindset they have to pigeonhole and put themselves into in order to villainize you for just doing what you came here to do or for shining. And how does that make them right? It does not. That is the weapon of victimization they are choosing to use to control things, people, and events around them, and to get you to step down to a level that's comfortable for them. But that is not how the world should look. That's not how the world should work. And that's not what's going to be best for you or them. Ultimately, you shining anyways would teach them that they can shine too, even if they didn't want to. And ultimately, that would teach them that they can choose something else and choose something greater for them. So don't keep yourself small for others when your purpose may be to shine. And don't let them villainize you in your own mind to keep you small. For that is not owning your power. That is not owning your purpose. That is not what Source put you on earth to experience whatsoever. And you might be thinking, well, it all belongs and Source put us here and this happens. So what do you mean it doesn't belong? Source didn't put me here for this. Well, we are saying right now, you are listening to this, you don't need that lesson. If you had that lesson, you don't need it anymore. We are telling you you're here to shine. So it doesn't belong anymore. That does not mean it won't happen ever again if you are entrenched in that pattern. It just means it's time to walk yourself out of it. And it just means it's time for you to choose something different. So you can own your power and change this world through you changing your circumstances, perhaps first and foremost. Not that you can't impact the collective or other people while you're still in the midst of certain programming or self-healing that you are doing to get yourself to a better place. Of course, you can be a wounded healer, so to speak, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. We are just trying to get you to stop the program. We are trying to get you to own who you are. We are trying to get you to a better life, a non-repressed life, a non-suppressed life, a non-oppressed life, if you will have it. And that does open another can of worms if we were to go to other topics of oppression on the planet. And that's not where we'd like to focus. We'd like to focus on you and what's going to help you own your power. So part of what this channel is unlocking is your solar plexus going to a balanced state so you can own your power in a balanced way and have the drive to accomplish the life of your dreams and the life you'd like to have. So even just imbibing this message, even if you get nothing out of it based on the words, you're shifting energetically to accomplish you owning your power and you standing in it more so you can have the life you'd like to live. And at the end of the day, isn't that what you'd like? A better life? and a better world, at least a better life for you. And again, you having the better life for you that you'd like to see could be the thing that gets you into the position and gets you into a position of your power that allows you to help the world. So never neglect the power of getting yourself to a good place and operating from there. Step one should be you getting to a good place. If you are not in a good place, what will it take? What do you need to do? That will be a place of power. So many of you think you need to suffer to help the world and to help other people. You need to lack money while helping others make money so they can succeed. You need to be in an unhealed state and suffer while you're trying to heal other people and get them to a good place so that the world can be changed and can be a different place. We would say, stop. You're running yourself ragged and you're not as effective from that place. You can be very effective. You are hyper magical, effective beings, and you really can be. At the same time, what are you doing if you're running yourself ragged for that? What example are you setting for the world and the people you serve? Definitely not an example of you owning your power. Definitely not an example of you coming from a good place. And you won't be able to help long term. So, all of this to say, what would you like to have? What would you like to create? How can you get there with ease? In a way that serves your and the highest good. For it will take owning your power, at least to an extent, for you to have the life you'd truly like to have. That's why we are talking about this topic today. It is worth looking into. And again, personal power is not power over others. It's not controlling others. It's not forcing people into your agenda. But it is you not being forced into others' agendas. It is you not being forced into the life others would like you to live rather than the one you would like to have for yourself. And it is you being in a powerful place where you can impact the world for the highest good. Should that be what you would like and what you would like to choose? And of course, we recommend that. For a balanced person, coming from a good place, will more than likely wish to help the world rather than tear it down. It is your wounds that wish to tear down the world and others and harm them and bring them down and teach them their lesson and put them in their place. It is your wounds that cause you to control, perhaps so you don't get hurt again. And that is not the place to be. That is not the seat of power. The seat of power is healed and well. The seat of power is alive and well. And it's authentic power from Source. Do you think Source is going to hand all the manifestations and dream life and the life of your dreams to someone who is disempowered and coming from a wounded place where they wish to harm the world? No. Source is going to work for the highest good. You might see things playing out in the world that don't seem like they're for the highest good. We would ask you to look at what might Source be doing through that. Number one is a question. But number two, you as a healed person wishing to be benevolent to the world, you will more than likely get more of what you'd like. We cannot promise that will be everything all of the time right away. But we will tell you that's a step closer to the life of your dreams than remaining in a wounded, unconscious place. So, your self-healing could be a key to you owning your power beyond what we've talked about today so far. Bear that in mind and keep that in mind. Where do you need self-healing so you can come from a good place and own your power? We are going to wind this down. Let's do a solar plexus chakra exercise before we end this for the day. If you can, if you're in the place to, please take a second to sit or lay down. Put your awareness on your solar plexus chakra. at the top of your abdomen. You can see a yellow spinning ball, or however it presents itself is perfect. Now breathe in a white healing light from source through your crown chakra all the way down to this yellow ball to your solar plexus chakra. Breathe in. And you are going to breathe out all the areas you are not owning your power. And see those areas, those things spill out in front of you from your solar plexus chakra as you breathe out. And see them spill out into Source's hands for Source to take those things away and transmute them for the highest good. So you may see a pair of hands extend down from Source in front of you, and you breathe out something that looks like a black or oozing liquid into Source's hands, and Source takes it and transmutes it for the highest good. You may see angels take it and transmute it. Whatever works for you. We are not here to control your experience, but to provide an energy that's going to help you and an exercise that's going to help you. So breathe in that healing white light once again to your solar plexus, through your crown. Allow it to linger. Breathe out everywhere you are not owning your power, into Source's hands. And ask Source and allow Source to take it and transmute it. And one more time, breathe in a white healing light from Source down to your solar plexus chakra. Breathe out everywhere you're not owning your power. You can see it spill directly out of your solar plexus, out in front of you into Source's hands, and ask Source to transmute it. And you can pause this and continue this for however long you think you need, or circle back to this exercise on your own, or re-listen to this if you'd like us to guide you through it again. But this is something you can do on your own to begin to own your power and to begin to heal your solar plexus chakra and balance it so you have an easier time manifesting and owning your power. This will also help to balance your desires so you are clear on what you desire. For if you are not clear on what you desire, how are you to move towards your desires and what you'd like to have? You may find yourself wandering aimlessly, or you may find yourself unclear on what you're asking for. It's okay to be in that spot. However, we would recommend asking for clarity and getting to clarity on that so you can begin to drive your life in the best directions for you. We are going to close this here. You can either continue with that exercise or not. But again, you can return to it anytime you feel your solar plexus needs help. We are wishing you well. We're wishing you healing. We're wishing you abundance. And we are wishing you, for the highest good, you owning your power and having a powerful result for yourself and a powerful effect on the world for the highest good through you owning your power. So go and be an example that will change the world. Not to put pressure on you, but to remind you that your example can change things, not just your direct efforts. We will leave you there. Farewell for now. So I hope that was helpful for you to whatever was for the highest good. And you can re-listen to that probably anytime you would like some help energetically with you owning your power and maybe even making the best choices for you. This has been really interesting for me to try this out. And if this helped you, if this shifted things for you, if this was something you would like more of, please let me know, whether it's in a comment section or you reach out through my website or in some other way. I'd love to hear your feedback. So I know this is a good idea to keep doing this. I mean, if I'm guided to do it, I'll do it regardless. Like, I'll still trust my intuition on it. However, I would love to hear if this did anything for you that you appreciated, of course. So if you'd ever like to go deeper with me and my work, you can find my website as well as some of my social media links in the description below, and you can find me and more of my work there. And besides that, please have a beautiful rest of your day or evening, and may what's for the highest good to transpire. I'm wishing you well, and may you have ease in owning your power for the highest good.